Part 1. The Weight of Small Things. Chapter 1. Cold tile under his feet. Ethan Way stood in the bathroom at 5:47 a.m., the mirror fogged from a shower he barely remembered taking, and counted the money in his head the way other men counted sheep. He had $1,100 in his checking account. He owed $300 to his landlord. He owed $40 to the pharmacy for his grandmother's blood pressure medication, which she insisted wasn't necessary, which she would not take unless he sat across from her and watched her swallow it. That left $760. He was 26 years old. He had a bachelor's degree in computer science from a university that his family had attended for 3 generations, though attended was generous for what he'd done. Survived, mostly, on a thin scholarship and the studied invisibility of a boy who had learned early that the safest posture in any room was the one that nobody noticed. He wiped the mirror with his palm. The face that came back at him was, objectively, a good face. He'd been told this. He did not think about it. He had other things to think about. The game was called Thornfield, a city builder wrapped around a mystery narrative, playable solo or cooperative, with procedurally generated weather systems that affected resource management in ways no other game had attempted. He'd been building it for 3 years in whatever hours the part-time help desk job left him. He'd launched it 6 weeks ago on a Tuesday because his grandmother had said Tuesday was a good day. She'd married his grandfather on a Tuesday, and look how that turned out. His grandmother was in Millbrook residence care on the east side of the city. His grandfather had left her 17 years ago for reasons Ethan did not entirely know, involving a woman named something that his grandmother always cut herself off before finishing. Thornfield had, in its first 6 weeks, generated exactly $1,840 in revenue. Ethan dried his face. He was not complaining. He was calculating. He left for the nursing home before the sun was up. The lobby of Millbrook smelled like industrial lavender and something underneath it that the lavender was losing to. Margaret Fong, the morning nurse who worked 5 days a week and 2 Sundays a month, looked up when Ethan came through the door and smiled the specific smile of someone who had grown fond of a person without meaning to. "She's awake," Margaret said, "already asking for you." "She asks for me, or she's asking why I'm not here yet." Margaret considered this, the second one. His grandmother, Ruth Way, was 79 years old and had the opinions of someone who intended to live to 112. She was sitting up in bed with a crossword puzzle when Ethan came in, reading glasses perched on her nose, a pencil hovering with premeditated menace over 14 across. "You're late," she said, without looking up. "It's 6:15 in the morning." "I've been awake since 5. "That's a choice you made." She lowered the pencil. She looked at him over the glasses with an expression that had been weathering him since he was 4 years old. "Sit down. You look like something the city lost." He sat. He'd brought fruit, a bag of clementines from the Korean grocery on his block, because she told him once that she liked the smell of them more than the taste, and he'd never forgotten that. He put them on the bedside table without ceremony. She reached for one immediately, began peeling it, and still hadn't thanked him, which was her version of thank you. "The game made $400 yesterday," he said. She stopped peeling. 400 on a Monday. She resumed peeling. "Monday," she said, in a tone that did not indicate she was impressed, but her hands slowed. "I think it's..." He stopped. He'd learned not to explain his optimism before he had hard data, because his grandmother's enthusiasm, once given, became a structural weight he didn't know how to carry. "I don't know yet. Could be a fluke." "Could be the beginning," she said. He said nothing. She handed him half the clementine. He ate it. "Your father called me," she said. The temperature of the room did not change. Ethan's jaw kept moving. "He didn't say what he wanted," she added. "He never says what he wants. He says he wants to talk. What he wants is my signature." She waved the crossword dismissively. "I told him I'd think about it." "You don't have to talk to him." "I know I don't have to." She looked at him directly, and something in her face was tired in a way that was different from tired. "Ethan, The shares. I know. They're worth more than he's saying they are. He has accountants who can make things look small. I don't have accountants. You have me. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, yes, I do. He left just before 7. He had a help desk shift at 9. He'd been up since 4:30 coding a patch for a weather loop bug in Thornfield that someone on Reddit had found and posted about with genuine delight, the way people sometimes celebrated the brokenness of things they loved. He ate a granola bar on the bus. He did not think about his father. He thought about the bug. Chapter 2. The help desk office had the specific acoustics of a space designed to muffle ambition. Ethan had been working there for 14 months. His supervisor, a man named Dennis, who kept motivational posters at angles that suggested he'd never been fully committed to hanging them, had twice offered him a promotion to Senior Support Associate, which was a title, not a raise. Ethan had declined twice. Dennis seemed to find this confusing but not offensive, which Ethan thought was the most accurate summary of Dennis as a person he could manage. At 11:42 a.m., Ethan's phone screen lit up on his desk. The message was from his game's distribution platform. Revenue notification, $6,840 processed, single-day record. He looked at it. He looked away. He looked at it again. Single-day record, $6,840 in one day. On a Tuesday, no, a Wednesday. It was Wednesday now. He had lost track. His finger hovered over the analytics dashboard. The spike came from a single thread on a gaming forum called The Vault, where a user named Orionplex had posted a video. 47 minutes of Thornfield gameplay with time-stamped commentary titled, "This game is doing something I've never seen before, and I think I need help." The video had 42,000 views. The comments were full of people tagging other people. Ethan put his phone face down on the desk. He stared at the ceiling. He thought, this could stop tomorrow. He thought, it might not. He thought, don't. He helped a woman in Portland troubleshoot her printer for 22 minutes. He answered 11 support tickets. He ate the second granola bar he'd packed and didn't taste it. At 2:15 p.m., the notification came again. Daily total updated, $14,220. He went to the bathroom and stood over the sink with the cold water running over his wrists until his heartbeat slowed. The game kept going. By the end of week 1, $89,000. By the end of week 2, Thornfield had been picked up by 3 separate gaming YouTube channels with combined subscriber counts in the millions, a piece in a games industry newsletter, and a brief mention in a tech publication that usually covered hardware and ignored indie developers entirely. By the end of week 3, $310,000. Ethan had not quit his job. Dennis had asked if he was okay. Ethan had said he was fine. Dennis had nodded slowly, in the way of a man who has decided someone else's situation is not his responsibility to understand. Ethan paid his grandmother's medical supplements. He paid the pharmacy. He paid 3 months of nursing home fees in advance, and when the administrator had looked at him with surprise, he'd said it was just easier this way, and she'd said, of course, and he'd left. He did not tell his family. He didn't think of them as family precisely. His father, Marcus Way, who ran a logistics company and had opinions about money that amounted to mine, and anything near me that isn't mine yet. His mother, Clara, who had left when Ethan was 3 and come back when he was 19, only to leave again, and who now appeared in his life at irregular intervals, bearing apologies that she immediately undercut with requests. His half-brother, Daniel, who was 2 years older, significantly more charming, and had once told a mutual friend that Ethan was a bit of a charity case emotionally. He did not hate them. He had, a long time ago, but hate required a kind of sustained attention he'd learned to redirect. He just didn't think of them as family. He thought of his grandmother. He thought of the game. He put the money in a savings account and kept going to work. On a Thursday in early March, a user left a review on Thornfield's platform page that read, "I don't usually write these. I've been playing games for 20 years. This one made me stay up until 3 a.m. 3 nights in a row, not because I was addicted, but because I kept feeling like the city needed me. I don't know how to explain that. Just, whoever made this, I hope you know what you did. Ethan read it at the help desk. He read it 3 times. He helped a man in Minneapolis troubleshoot his VPN. He thought about it for the rest of the day.
Chapter 3. He met the Shen sisters in the 3rd month. He didn't know they were sisters at first. He didn't know anything about them for the first 48 hours because he'd been drugged. Here is what he remembered afterward, assembled from fragments. He'd been at his apartment on a Friday evening, working on the next content update for Thornfield, eating cereal because he'd forgotten to buy actual food again. His mother had called earlier. He hadn't answered. She'd texted, "Call me when you can, something important." He'd meant to call back and hadn't. At some point, he'd eaten a takeout order he hadn't remembered placing, or maybe he had placed it. His memory of that evening was consistently foggy at the edges, like trying to remember a dream in the afternoon. He woke up the next morning in his own bed, with no memory of going to sleep, a headache that felt like something had been rearranged behind his eyes, and 2 women in his apartment. Not in his room. In his kitchen. He could hear them talking in low voices before he was fully awake. He'd grabbed the baseball bat he kept under his bed by reflex. Old reflex, left over from 2 years sharing a building with a man who knocked on doors at 3 a.m., and walked out to find one woman standing at his counter, looking at his laptop with the expression of someone who found what they expected and was deciding how she felt about it. Another woman sitting at his kitchen table, looking directly at the doorway as if she'd been waiting for him to come through it. "Good morning," said the woman at the table. She said it the way you'd say it to someone you'd been having breakfast with for years. Ethan stood in his doorway with a baseball bat. "You can put that down," said the woman at the counter, still not looking at him. "We're not here to rob you. We're here because of a situation." "What situation?" The woman at the table looked at her sister. He knew now that they were sisters, though he hadn't known it then, and something passed between them. Then she looked back at him. "My name is Vivian Shen," she said. "This is my sister Mara. We're here because—" She paused. "I think you should sit down." "I'm fine standing." "Ethan." She said his name like she'd said it before. "Please sit down." He sat. Vivian Shen was 30 years old. She ran the capital deployment arm of Shen Capital, a private investment group that her family had founded 40 years ago. She had a face that was, objectively, extraordinary. Not in the way that a picture was extraordinary, but in the way that a weather system was extraordinary. Something with internal architecture that you noticed differently every time you looked. She was also, as she explained in a voice that remained perfectly level throughout, 5 months pregnant with his child. Her sister Mara, who had not yet spoken, was 4 months and 3 weeks pregnant with his child. Ethan sat at his kitchen table and said nothing for a very long time. "How?" he said finally. "You don't remember," Vivian said, not a question. "I remember Friday evening, that's it. Something was added to your food." She said it the way you'd say it rained on Thursday, factual, offered without drama, but watching his face very carefully. "I didn't know about it until after. My sister also didn't know." A pause. "Our mother orchestrated it. She has since been informed that this is unacceptable, in detail." Mara from the counter said, "That's a polite way to say Vivian made her cry." Mara. "She did, though." Mara finally turned around. She was younger than her sister by 4 years, and she looked like Vivian the way a river looks like the sea. Same source, different pace, different depth. She had a small scar near her left eyebrow, and she crossed her arms when she looked at Ethan. Not defensive, just evaluating. "We're not here to threaten you. We're not here to demand anything. We're here because you're going to be a father, and you should know. To both of you." "Yes." Ethan looked at the 2 of them. He thought, this is not real. He thought, the baseball bat is still in my hand. He put the bat on the floor. Part 2. The Architecture of Warmth. Chapter 4. For the next 3 months, he did not see them. Thornfield crossed $1 million in revenue. He hired a part-time sound designer remotely. He quit the help desk job, which took him 4 separate attempts because every time he tried to write the resignation letter, Dennis would materialize with a look of vague concern, and Ethan would lose his nerve. He finally did it on a Tuesday. He went to see his grandmother that same day. She listened to the whole story, the Friday evening, the sisters, the pregnancies, with the patience of someone who had survived enough to know that extraordinary things happen to ordinary people constantly, and most people just don't talk about it. "Are they good women?" she asked when he finished. "I don't know them." "That's not what I asked." He thought about Vivian's face when she'd said something was added to your food. The way she'd said it, not apologizing on behalf of her mother, but also not distancing herself from the weight of it, holding it, owning the inconvenience of telling him. He thought about Mara saying she made her cry with a small, sharp satisfaction that had nothing to do with cruelty. "I think they might be," he said. His grandmother nodded, once. She handed him a clementine from the bag he'd brought. "Then pay attention," she said.
The daughters were born on a single day in November, 6 weeks apart in gestational age, but arriving, with whatever stubbornness their fathers apparently contributed genetically, within 4 hours of each other, in the same hospital. Vivian's daughter first, at 4:12 a.m., Mara's daughter at 8:47 a.m. Ethan sat in a waiting room for 8 hours and 47 minutes. He had brought his laptop. He had not opened it. When they let him in, Vivian was holding her daughter and looked at him across the room in a way that he did not have words for then, and still doesn't. The baby's name was Iris. Mara's daughter in the next room was Ren. Ethan held each of them for 4 minutes each, because that's how long before the nurses needed to do other things. He held them carefully. He had held exactly 0 babies in his life, and his arms knew it, but he held them anyway. He walked out into the November air at 10:30 a.m. and called his grandmother. "They're here," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "Tuesday," she said. "Almost Tuesday," he said. 4 hours off." She laughed. It was a real laugh, not a polite one. He had not heard her laugh like that in almost a year. He stood on the sidewalk outside the hospital until his feet got cold. Chapter 5. He spent the first year circling them. This is the most accurate way to describe it. He was involved, present, showing up, doing the things a father was supposed to do, bringing food, reading books with excessive character voices, attending the pediatrician's appointments, and memorizing the growth percentiles with a focus that alarmed the nurse. But he was doing all of it from a slight distance, a careful distance. He told himself this was appropriate. Vivian and Mara Shen were the daughters of one of the oldest private investment families in the city. Their mother, Helena Shen, sat on the boards of 4 nonprofits and had opinions about furniture. Their cousin Lucas ran the family company and drove a car that cost more than Ethan's total revenue for the first 6 months of Thornfield. The family had a house in the hills, not a house, a compound, where the sisters lived in adjacent suites with a shared terrace. Ethan lived in his apartment. He'd moved to a better apartment. 1 bedroom, good light, a second room he turned into a proper office. He could afford it now, comfortably. Thornfield had a DLC expansion in development, a licensing inquiry from a hardware company, and a small but genuine community that had started organizing in-game events on weekends. He could afford many things. He still picked up the clementines from the Korean grocery, not the expensive kind. He told himself his distance from the sisters was appropriate. They were wildly outside his world. They had shared custody arrangements handled by lawyers. They were polite to him, more than polite. Vivian with a warmth that seemed to him both entirely genuine and carefully measured. Mara with a directness that occasionally crossed into things he couldn't classify. He told himself he was being sensible. He was also, underneath the sensible, terrified. Mara figured this out faster than her sister, or she said something about it first. They were in the Shen family's terrace garden on a Saturday afternoon. The girls were 14 months old, busy destroying a pile of soft blocks with the methodical enthusiasm of small people discovering cause and effect. And Ethan was watching them with the expression he always wore watching them, which Mara would later describe to her sister as the one where he looks like someone handed him something he doesn't believe he's allowed to keep. She sat down next to him. She didn't say anything for a while. Then, "You know you don't have to perform gratitude, right? You can just be here." He looked at her. "You always look like you're about to apologize for taking up space," she said. Her arms were crossed, her tone was not unkind. "It's exhausting to watch. I'm not. You thank us for including you in things that are yours. You qualify every compliment about the girls with, 'Not that I'm taking credit.' You showed up last week with a gift for Iris because it was Ren's birthday and you didn't want Iris to feel left out, which," she paused, "that was actually quite good. But you framed it as, 'I'm sorry if this is overstepping.'" He opened his mouth. "You're their father," she said. Not angry, not soft, just, "This is the sentence, here it is. It's not overstepping." Iris, from across the terrace, raised a soft block triumphantly and announced something in the language of 14-month-olds that required no translation. Ethan watched her. "Yeah," he said, after a long time. Mara didn't answer. She just stayed where she was. That counted for something he didn't have a name for. Chapter 6. The game released its expansion in the spring. Thornfield, Beneath the City, an underground layer to the game world, a subterranean civilization with its own politics, economy, and moral system that interacted with decisions players had made in the surface game. He'd been building it for 7 months. He'd had 2 contractors helping on the art assets, a composer he'd found through a forum, a Q&A tester named Jennifer who sent him bug reports written like short stories. He launched it on a Tuesday. He was at the Shen compound with the girls when the notifications started coming in. Ren was asleep on his chest. Iris was asleep in Mara's arms across the room. Vivian had gone to her study to take a call. His phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then again. He looked at the screen without moving his shoulder, careful not to wake Ren. Revenue notifications. Forum activity. A message from the hardware company about the licensing deal. A message from someone whose name he didn't recognize asking if he was interested in speaking at a game design conference. He looked at Ren. She was making the small sounds that sleeping babies make, the ones that mean nothing and everything. He put his phone face down on the sofa cushion beside him. He stayed very still. Mara, across the room, was watching him. She looked at his face for a long moment. Then she looked at the phone, then back at him. "Good news?" she said, quietly, so as not to wake Iris. "Maybe," he said. She tilted her head. "How maybe?" He thought about it. 7 figures in the first day, maybe. The expression on Mara's face was not the one he expected. It was not the impressed look, the celebratory look, the congratulations look. It was something else, something smaller and more careful. "About time," she said. He stared at her. "What?" she said. "Nothing." He looked back at Ren. Nobody's ever said that to me before." "Said what?" "Like, that it was the right outcome, that it was expected, not a surprise." Mara was quiet for a moment. "It's not a surprise," she said simply. "We've been watching you work for a year." He didn't say anything. About time, he thought. About time. He thought, I am going to remember this sentence for a very long time. Ren shifted in her sleep, burrowing fractionally deeper into his chest. He put his hand on her back. He stayed. Chapter 7. There was a housekeeper at the Shen compound named Raymond, who had worked for the family for 14 years and who communicated primarily through eyebrows. Ethan had, for the first 8 months, been uncertain of Raymond's opinion of him. Raymond executed every request with efficiency and complete neutrality. He brought things. He knew where things were. He anticipated needs with a precision that suggested either extensive intuition or a comprehensive briefing document. One evening in April, Ethan was in the kitchen at 11 p.m. after putting the girls to sleep. He'd stayed later than planned because Iris had decided the evening was not yet over and required 17 additional readings of a book about a bear who loses his hat. And he found Raymond at the counter, very quietly eating what appeared to be leftover dumplings from dinner. They looked at each other. Raymond offered him the container without a word. Ethan sat down at the kitchen island and ate dumplings at 11 p.m. with a man who had served him for 8 months without expression, in a kitchen that cost more than his first 3 apartments combined, and it was the most comfortable he'd been in the house since arriving. Raymond poured him a glass of water. Ethan said, "Can I ask you something?" Raymond said, "You're going to ask if I think this situation is strange." "Is it?" Raymond considered. "I've worked for this family for 14 years, he said. I've seen 3 engagements, 2 divorce proceedings, 1 elopement that nobody discussed afterward, a situation involving a yacht that I signed an NDA about, and the time Lucas Shen tried to smuggle a dog into a hotel by putting it in a guitar case." He ate another dumpling. "This is, objectively, somewhat unusual, but Miss Vivian and Miss Mara are the least chaotic people in this family. And you," he paused, "you show up every time." "Of course I show up." "That's not of course," Raymond said. "That's you." He refilled both their water glasses. He did not say anything else. Ethan thought about it all the way home. Part 3. The Wound That Names Itself. Chapter 8. His mother called on a Wednesday. He answered this time because he'd been meaning to, because he'd been putting it off for 3 weeks, because the putting off was its own kind of weight. "Ethan." Clara Way's voice was the voice he'd known since he was 19. Warm, immediate, designed to recall something earlier and better, though what that earlier and better thing was exactly had always been unclear. "It's so good to hear you. How are you doing? How is everything?" "Fine. What's up?" A small pause. She had never liked directness, which meant she'd never fully understood him. "I was hoping we could have lunch. Your father mentioned something, and I thought it would be better coming from me." "What did he mention?" "It's about your grandmother's health." Cold moved through him. Not panic, just cold. "What about it?" "Marcus says her condition has changed. He's been in contact with the nursing home." He was standing in his office. Thornfield was open on his screen, the development build, mid-patch. "My grandmother's doctor contacts me," he said, "not my father. If her condition had changed, I would know." "Ethan, what does he actually want, Mom?" A longer pause. "He wants you to come to dinner," she said. "He thinks it's time the family sat down together." "That's not a family. He's your father. He's a man who shares my DNA and has never once said anything to me that wasn't about what he needed." He said it flat, not angry. He'd spent the anger years ago. "If grandmother's condition has changed, I'll find out from her doctor. Tell Marcus I'll bring the shares to a neutral location with a lawyer present or not at all." He hung up. He sat down at his desk. He opened the patch file. He did not code anything for 11 minutes. Then he did. The nursing home doctor called on Thursday. Her name was Dr. Osei, and she had been Ruth Way's physician for 3 years. She called every 2 weeks with updates that she delivered with the care of someone who understood that information, given well, was its own form of treatment. "Her energy levels have decreased," Dr. Osei said. "She's sleeping more. Appetite is down slightly." "Nothing acute, but," a pause, "we should talk about a longer-term picture." "How long?" Ethan said. "I can't give you a number. I can tell you she's stable. I can tell you she's comfortable. I can tell you that she asks about her grandson every single day, and that when you visit, her vitals genuinely improve." "I'll come Friday," he said. "She'll like that," Dr. Osei said. He sat on the edge of his desk after the call. Somewhere in the apartment, his phone was receiving messages. From Jennifer about a QA issue, from the hardware company about a meeting time, from Mara with a photo of Ren, who had apparently figured out how to climb out of her crib and was extremely proud of this. He didn't check any of them. He sat on the edge of his desk and thought about his grandmother at 19, saying, "Whatever you build, I'll believe in it before I see it," because she'd known him since before he had language, and she'd always understood the shape of him even when he didn't. Whatever you build, he built something good. She knew. Chapter 9. His father's people found him on Friday, not at the nursing home, before, in the parking structure of his own building at 7:45 a.m. as he was walking to his car. 3 men in a configuration that was too deliberate to be accidental, positioned around the entrance to the elevator bay. The one in front was maybe 40, good shoes, the patient expression of someone who'd done this before. "Mr. Wei," the man said, "your father would like a word." Ethan stopped. He looked at the 3 of them. He assessed the situation with the calm of someone who had been assessed himself enough times to know what it felt like. "Tell him to call me," he said. "He'd prefer in person." "He prefers a lot of things. That's not a reason for me to be anywhere." He started moving again toward the car. The man in front moved with him, not blocking, just redirecting. "Mr. Wei?" The voice was still patient. "It would really be better. Better for who?" The man in front didn't answer. Ethan stopped again. He looked at the man very directly. "I'm going to visit my grandmother," he said. "You can tell my father that if he wants to send representatives to my home at 8 in the morning, he should expect that I'll remember it. And I keep records." He looked at the man to the left, then the right. "So do the parking structure cameras, which are maintained by the building management, not by my family." He said the last 2 words the way other people might say, "not by you." He got in his car. His hands were steady. His heart was moving faster than usual. He registered both of these as data and drove. The nursing home visit was quiet. Ruth was awake, more alert than recent visits, her crossword abandoned in favor of looking out the window at a courtyard where a single tree was doing something complicated with the morning light. She looked smaller than last week. He always noticed this. He had stopped trying not to notice it. He sat beside her and peeled the clementines he'd brought. She said, "Your father." "Yeah." "What did he do?" "Sent people to my building. Nothing dramatic, just a reminder that he can." She was quiet for a moment. "He's afraid," she said. "Of what?" "That you'll become someone he can't control." She took the clementine piece he offered. "He always was, even when you were small." She ate it. "You were never going to be his kind of person. He knew that." His kind of person. "Someone who needs him." She said it simply. "He built everything around being necessary. Your brother is necessary to him. You never were." A pause. "That's not a wound you carry. That's a freedom you don't know you have yet." Ethan looked at his hands. "The shares," he said. "When I'm gone," she said, "I don't want to talk about when you're—" "Ethan." Her voice was gentle, but not soft. "When I'm gone, there will be lawyers. There will be pressure. You know what they'll say." She looked at him. "Hold them. Don't sell. Not to your father, not to your brother. Hold them and make them come to you at full price." She reached over and put her hand on his arm. Her hand was dry and warm and had been the same hand his whole life. "You don't owe them anything." He covered her hand with his. "I know," he said. He stayed until she fell asleep, which was earlier than usual. He sat beside her sleeping for 20 minutes before he left. Chapter 10. The collapse happened on a Tuesday in October. He'd known it was coming the way you know a storm is coming. Not the exact hour, not the specific shape of the damage, but you have registered the pressure change in the air and you know something is about to be different. Thornfield had, in the past 3 months, attracted the attention of a company called Axiom Interactive, which was large and well-funded and had a history of acquiring small studios and turning them into larger studios that made games that looked like the original games in the way that a photograph looks like a person. All the features, none of the life. They'd made him an offer in August. He'd said no. They'd made him a second offer in September. He'd said no. The third offer came attached to a legal letter that his lawyer, a woman named Park Ji-soon, who had been recommended by Mara and who had the specific energy of a person who genuinely enjoyed problems, described as aggressive but not without logic. They're claiming prior art on the weather resource mechanic, Ji-soon had said, without adjusting her expression. It's not a strong claim, but litigation is expensive and slow, and they know that. What do they actually want? A licensing agreement. 20% of ongoing revenue. Credit in the intellectual property documentation. Effectively, a tax on your success. And if I don't, then we fight it, which we can. But, she had paused here, it'll consume you for a year, minimum. He'd said, give me a week. That was 3 weeks ago. He hadn't answered. The legal letter had also, he had since learned, been delivered to Vivian Shen. Not because of anything he'd done, it had been delivered to her because Axiom Interactive had done their research, and their research had turned up that Vivian's private investment arm had made 3 small investments in Thornfield's parent LLC over the previous 18 months. Standard LP investments, quiet, not public. But Axiom's lawyers had found them, which meant Axiom knew that Vivian Shen had a stake in the company they were trying to leverage. Ethan had found out on a Tuesday. He'd found out from Vivian herself, who had called him at 8 a.m. and said, I should have told you.
What? He'd said, still half asleep. The investments. I should have told you when I made them. Her voice was measured, but underneath the measure was something tighter. I was going to. I kept not finding the right moment. He'd sat up in bed. How much? He said. Cumulatively, about 400,000. It's not, she stopped herself. It's not a controlling stake. It's not even significant from a business standpoint, but it means they can argue we have a conflict of interest in any dispute. He'd been quiet for a long time. Ethan, I'm here. I'm sorry. I should have told you. A pause. I think I was afraid of what you'd think, that it looked like that we were managing you. He'd hung up. Not in anger, exactly. He hadn't had enough of a specific feeling to name it anger. He'd hung up because there was nothing in him that could form a response, and sitting on the phone in silence had felt unbearable.
He sat in his apartment alone from 8 in the morning until 11 at night. He did not open his laptop. He did not call anyone. He ate nothing until about 3 in the afternoon when he found a banana on his kitchen counter and ate it mechanically, tasting nothing. He sat on his couch and he let himself feel it, all of it, the whole accumulated weight. The father who'd sent men to his parking garage, the grandmother who was sleeping more and more, the game he'd built with nothing but time and stubbornness for 3 years, the money, the strange, improbable money, the money that hadn't made him feel like he thought it would, that had instead made him feel more visible in ways he hadn't prepared for. The 2 women who were the mothers of his daughters, Iris, Ren. He pressed his hands flat against his knees. He thought, I have no plan. This was, in his experience, not necessarily true. He'd operated without a plan plenty of times, and plans had a way of assembling themselves around action. But tonight, he believed it. Tonight, the belief in it was absolute and calm and terrible. He had no plan. He had a grandmother who was dying by millimeters. He had a company trying to take his work apart. He had a woman who had invested in his company without telling him, and he didn't know if that was care or control, and he wasn't sure he had the equipment to tell the difference. He had daughters.
He thought, at least I have daughters. The thought came from somewhere very basic, some part of him that existed before strategy or calculation, some part that had been put there by 14 months of Saturday afternoons and Tuesday evenings in one specific moment when Rin had put both her small hands on his face and looked at him with total seriousness and said something that sounded like his name but wasn't yet, her mouth practicing the shape of him. At least he had that. He sat in his apartment until the light changed. He did not call the lawyers. He did not call Mara. He did not call Vivian. He did not call anyone. He was wrong. He was afraid. He had no plan. He was one man in a one-bedroom apartment on a Tuesday in October, and the city outside his window was continuing without reference to any of this. He sat with it. He didn't try to fix it. He just sat.
He thought about his grandmother saying, "Whatever you build." He thought about Mara saying, "About time." He thought about Raymond pouring the second glass of water without asking. He thought, "I have been known by people who don't have to know me." He thought, "That's something. That's real. The rest is negotiable." At 11:04 p.m., he got up and went to bed. He did not have a plan. He was going to have one by morning. Part 4. What Stays? Chapter 11. The morning brought two things. First, Mara was sitting on his front steps when he opened the door at 7:15. She had a coffee in each hand and the expression of someone who had decided something and was not going to undo it. She held one out. He took it. "I called my sister," she said. "She said you hung up." I needed to think. "Did you?" "Yes." She nodded once. "Did it help?" He drank the coffee. It was from the place on 3rd, the one that had an extremely small menu and extremely strong opinions about it.
He didn't know how she'd known that was his place. Then he remembered. He'd mentioned it once, months ago, in passing. She'd remembered. "A little," he said. She stood up. "Good, because Vivian spent yesterday on the phone with 3 of the best IP litigation attorneys in the country. None of them are cheap. All of them are interested." A pause. "She'd like to pay for it. She knows that's a conversation. She wanted me to ask you in advance so you could think about it separately from being upset with her." He looked at Mara. "Why are you here instead of her?" he said. "Because she thought you might need someone to be angry at who wasn't her." Mara said it without flinching. "And I volunteered." He thought about this for a moment. "I'm not angry," he said. I had to reclassify some things, understand why she did it." "And do you?" He looked at the coffee. "She was watching," he said. "Same as I watched the game. Same as... She wanted to know it would be okay."
So she put something in. Mara didn't confirm or deny this. She just waited. "I still wish she'd told me," he said. "Yes," Mara said, "you should tell her that, with those exact words." He looked at her. "What?" she said. "You're not actually the scary one," he said. "You just let people think that." She opened her mouth, closed it, looked faintly annoyed, which for Mara meant she was slightly pleased. "Coffee's getting cold," she said. The second thing the morning brought was his brother. He'd been expecting his father to escalate after the parking garage. He'd thought the escalation would be more lawyers. He hadn't considered his brother, which was, he acknowledged privately, a failure of imagination. Daniel Wei was 32 years old and had the specific charisma of someone who had always been looked at in rooms and had arranged his entire personality around that fact. He was not unintelligent. He was not unkind, exactly. He was exactly as kind as was useful to him at any given moment. He showed up at the nursing home. Ethan arrived to find Daniel already in Ruth's room, sitting in the chair by the window, with the comfortable posture of a man who had decided he belonged somewhere and was waiting for the world to agree. Ruth was looking at Daniel the way she looked at things she found structurally unsound. "Here he is," Daniel said when Ethan walked in, warmly. "The man of the hour." "Why are you here?" "I came to see Grandma." He gestured at Ruth, inviting Ethan to observe that this was, technically, true. "And you, of course.
We don't see enough of each other. We see exactly as much of each other as I prefer. Ruth made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but had the same bones. Dad wants to talk, Daniel said. He's not going to send people to your apartment again. He said to tell you that directly. He can tell me directly himself. He's too proud.
Daniel said it without judgment, the way you'd describe a landscape feature. You know that. He would rather use every available intermediary than make a concession that looks like a concession. A pause. He's afraid of you. People keep saying that because it's true. Ethan looked at his brother. He thought, this is the offer. This is the shape of the offer. Daniel was here to be reasonable. Daniel was here to be the middle path, the face of compromise, the evidence that the family could be talked to. Daniel was, probably, sincere about most of what he was saying. That was the thing about Daniel. He was almost always sincere. He just thought sincerity was a tool. What does he want? Ethan said. The shares? When Grandma? Daniel glanced at Ruth. Eventually. At what price? Fair market. Whose assessment of fair market? Daniel was quiet for a moment. A real moment, not a performed one. That's negotiable, he said. I think. I want an independent appraisal. My lawyer present. Everything in writing before any meeting happens. Ethan crossed to the other side of the room and sat on the edge of his grandmother's bed. And I want it understood that any pressure, any men in parking garages, any middle-of-the-night phone calls, anything that goes around me to my daughters or their mothers, and I stop talking. Permanently. Daniel studied him. You're different, he said, not with hostility, with something more like curiosity. I grew up, Ethan said. No, Daniel shook his head slowly. You were always grown. Something else changed. He stood. He smoothed his jacket with the practiced gesture of a man who thought about his appearance frequently. I'll tell Dad. He nodded at Ruth. It was good to see you. He left. Ruth looked at Ethan. You handled that well, she said. Did I? Better than I would have. She picked up the clementine from the bedside table and held it out. Peel this for me. My hands are tired today. He peeled it. She ate it. Neither of them said anything for a while. Chapter 12. The lawsuit settled. Not because Axiom's lawyers were weak, they weren't, but because Jisun was better, and because Vivian's referrals were excellent, and because, as it turned out, Axiom had made similar claims against 2 other studios in the past 18 months, and one of those studios had documentation that contradicted Axiom's core argument about prior art. Jisun had found it. She'd described finding it to Ethan with the quiet satisfaction of a person who had been right about where to look. The settlement required a limited licensing acknowledgement and a one-time payment that was, in the scheme of things, small enough to count as a lesson rather than a wound. Ethan paid it. He also, the week after, asked Vivian to lunch, not at the compound, not at a restaurant she chose. At the coffee place on 3rd, where the menu was small and the opinions about it were strong, which he'd selected because it was his place and he wanted to be on his own ground for this particular conversation. She sat across from him at a small table. She had the coffee black. He had noticed this before and had not commented on it before. He commented on it now. You always have it black, he said. Yes. Is that a preference or a statement? The corner of her mouth moved. My sister makes the same observation about twice a year. A pause. It's a preference. I don't like sweetness in the things I need. He thought about that. The investment, he said. Yes. She wrapped both hands around the cup. Her hands were steady. I was going to tell you, I want you to know that's true, not because it changes what I did, but because the timeline matters to me. She looked at him. I made the first investment when Thornfield had been out for 3 weeks. I'd seen the early numbers. I'd seen the forum thread. I thought... She stopped. I thought, this is the beginning of something real, and I wanted to be in it. And you didn't tell me. No. Simple. I was afraid that if I told you, you'd push it away, the way you push things away. She said it without accusation, just observation. You always thank us before you leave. You always frame your visits as a favor we're doing for you. You hold everything at a distance that makes you feel, she paused, like you can return it if it turns out you're not supposed to have it. The coffee shop was making its small sounds around them, someone's order being called, the bell on the door. It was still my call to make, he said. Yes, it was, she met his eyes. I'm sorry. He believed her. He also thought, she is telling me she saw me. For 3 weeks, when I barely saw myself, she looked at the work and saw something worth placing a bet on. He thought, I don't know what to do with that. He thought, I should probably figure out. I'm not going to tell you it's fine, he said. I'm still working out what I think about it. Okay, but I don't, he looked at his coffee. I don't think it came from a bad place. She was quiet for a moment. No, she said, it didn't. They sat with that. The bell on the door rang again. Someone ordered something complicated. The barista had opinions about it. How's Iris? He said finally. Vivian's face changed in the way it changed only when she talked about the girls, the thing that could not be performed, the thing that was simply there. She learned to say no last week, she said, very clearly, about everything. We're in a phase. Ren's doing the same thing, he said. It's actually impressive, the range of application. Mara thinks it's the funniest thing that's ever happened. Mara is not wrong. Vivian looked at him. Something shifted in the room, very slightly. Not dramatic, just shifted. Ethan, she said. Yeah. I know this is strange. The situation, all of it. She did not look away. I know it's not what you would have chosen. He thought about that. He thought, I'm not sure that's true. He thought, 14 months of Saturday afternoons, Iris learning to say no, Ren practicing the shape of his name, coffee on front steps, dumplings at 11 p.m. About time. He thought, I don't know what I would have chosen, given the choice. I'm not sure it's not what I would have chosen, he said. A very long silence. Her hands around the coffee cup did not move. That's the first time you've said anything like that, she said carefully. I know. He looked at the table. I'm still working things out. Take your time. I will. The coffee was getting cold. Neither of them moved to leave. Chapter 13. His father held the meeting. Neutral location. A law office on the 20th floor of a building downtown. Glass walls. A view of the city that was probably meant to communicate something. Ethan came with Jisoon. Marcus Wei came with 2 lawyers and, slightly behind them, Clara, Ethan's mother, who had apparently decided to attend for reasons she did not explain and which Ethan did not have the bandwidth to interrogate. Marcus Wei was 61 years old. He was shorter than Ethan, which had always seemed wrong to him as a child, the way a fact can seem wrong before you learn to distinguish between facts and expectations. He had the same face as Ethan, rearranged into different priorities. The jaw, the eyes, but where Ethan's expression defaulted to careful attention, Marcus's defaulted to calculation. He looked at Ethan for a long moment before anything else happened. You look well, he said. I am well, Ethan said. The game is doing well, Marcus said. I've been following it. I know. A pause. Marcus sat down. Everyone sat down. Papers were placed on the table. Jason had the independent appraisal, which he placed precisely in the center of the table without ceremony. The appraisal put the shares at significantly more than Marcus had offered. Marcus looked at the number for a long moment. This is higher than market, he said. It reflects the company's actual trajectory, Jason said, which is upward. We can negotiate. The number is the number. Ethan said it once, flat. You can pay it or you can find another buyer. He paused. Or you can wait. But every quarter you wait, the appraisal goes up.
Marcus looked at him. There was something in his father's face, behind the calculation, that Ethan could not fully read and was not sure he wanted to. Something that might have been, in another version of this man, in a different history, something like recognition. "Fine," Marcus said. Clara found him in the elevator lobby after. She had the careful look she wore when she was about to say something true. "He was proud of you," she said. "He won't say it, but he was." Ethan pressed the elevator button. "He could have said it," he said. "I know." "He had 30 years." "I know." Her voice was quiet. "I know he did." The elevator opened. He got in. She didn't follow. Just before the doors closed, she said, "I was proud of you too. Since you were small, She stopped. "I was always better at leaving than staying." The doors closed. He stood in the elevator going down. He thought, "That's the most honest thing she's ever said to me." He thought, "It doesn't fix anything." He thought, "But it's something." Chapter 14. Ruth Way died on a Thursday in January. Peacefully, Dr. Osei told him, in her sleep. She had not been in pain.
She had eaten the clementine he'd brought 2 days earlier and told him that the crossword that week was extremely difficult and she suspected the editors were being deliberately obtuse. She died on a Thursday. He stayed at the nursing home for 3 hours after, handling the immediate things that need handling. Margaret, the morning nurse, brought him coffee without being asked. He drank it. He talked to the administrator. He called Daniel, who answered in 2 rings and said, after a silence, "I'll tell Dad." And Ethan believed he meant it. He drove to the Shen compound because he didn't know where else to go. He didn't call ahead. He just arrived. Raymond opened the door before he knocked. He was still unsure how Raymond did that, whether it was genuine perception or extremely good cameras. Took one look at Ethan's face and stepped aside. Vivian was in the kitchen. She looked up from whatever she was doing. She looked at his face. She crossed the kitchen and put her arms around him. She didn't say anything. He stood there. His hands came up, slowly, and he held on. He stood in a kitchen that smelled like the dinner that had just been cleaned up, and some kind of essential oil that Vivian used, and the particular warmth of a house where children lived, and he held on. After a while, Mara came in. She looked at them. She looked at Ethan's face, which was not composed, which had stopped trying to be composed. She went and got 2 glasses of water and put them on the counter. She sat down at the kitchen island and said nothing. He stood with Vivian for another minute. Then he sat down at the kitchen island and drank the water. "She liked Tuesdays," he said. "I know," Mara said. "You told us." She thought they were lucky. Maybe they were. He thought about this. She died on a Thursday. "Maybe Thursdays are lucky too," Mara said. "Maybe she just needed a different day." It was not exactly funny. But something in it landed in him anyway. Some specific warmth. "She would have liked you," he said to Mara. Mara raised her eyebrows. Based on what? She appreciated people who said what they actually meant. Mara considered this with the expression of someone receiving a compliment they're not sure they should accept. "That's extremely niche," she said. She was an extremely specific person. From somewhere down the hall, a small voice, Iris, unmistakably, the particular frequency of Iris when she was awake and investigating, floated toward them. "Daddy?" He closed his eyes. He opened them. He stood up. Chapter 15. Thornfield crossed 5 million users in the spring. He was at his desk when the notification came. He read it once. He saved the tab. He went to make coffee. He thought, she would have said, "About time." He thought, I should tell someone. He called Vivian. "Thornfield hit 5 million, he said when she answered. A pause. Then, "Ethan." "Yeah?" That's... He could hear her composing herself, the breath of someone who is genuinely moved and is deciding what to do with that. "That's extraordinary. You should be..." "I know," he said. "I just wanted to tell someone. I'm glad you called me." "You were always going to be the call," he said. Silence. "I'll tell Mara," she said, quietly. "Okay. The girls will not understand, but they'll like the energy in the room." "That's fine," he said. "The energy in the room is good enough." He sat at his desk after the call. He thought about 5 million people who had built cities in a world he'd constructed during 3 years of granola bars and bus rides and 5 a.m. help desk shifts and visits to his grandmother. He thought about all those cities, procedurally generated, never quite the same twice, shaped by weather systems that were not predictable, that required you to keep adjusting. He thought, that's the thing, you keep adjusting. He opened the development build. He started working on the next thing. Epilogue, Sunday in April. Warm tile, the kitchen floor heated from below, a feature the Shen compound had that he'd thought excessive for approximately the first 4 months, and now actively appreciated when he showed up in socks at 7 in the morning. Iris was already awake. She was constitutionally incapable of sleeping past 6, and was sitting at the kitchen island, drawing something on a large piece of paper with complete focus. She was 3 years old and had strong opinions about blue. Raymond had apparently already made coffee. There was a full pot on the counter, and Raymond himself was nowhere visible, which meant he'd decided his presence wasn't required, which was the highest form of courtesy Raymond offered. Ethan poured himself a cup. He leaned on the counter and looked at Iris's drawing. It was, as far as he could tell, a city. Buildings in blue, a river in blue, something that might have been weather in blue.
"Iris," he said. She looked up with the specific expression of someone interrupted at work they consider important. "Is that a city?" She looked back at the drawing. "Yes," she said. "I'm building it." He drank his coffee. "What does it need?" he said. She thought about this with enormous seriousness. "More blue," she said. She reached for a crayon. He watched her work. From somewhere down the hall, Ren woke up. He could tell by the quality of the sound, not distress, just announcement. "I am awake now, and this seems relevant." He heard Mara's voice, low and immediate, the voice she used before she was fully awake, all the sharp edges softened. He heard, a moment later, Vivian's door. The house assembled itself around him, the way a city does, piece by piece, unscheduled, each part finding its relation to the others through nothing more complicated than proximity and time. Iris added more blue to the river. He stayed where he was. On the counter, his phone was dark.
No notifications, no urgent messages, no legal letters, no family emergencies, no revenue alerts. Just the morning, and the heated floor, and the smell of coffee. On the window ledge above the sink, in a small ceramic bowl he'd brought from his apartment 3 months ago and never taken back, was the dried peel of the last clementine he'd brought his grandmother. He'd meant to throw it away. He kept not. The morning light came through the window and hit it exactly. He looked at it. He thought nothing. He drank his coffee. He stayed. In the development build of the next expansion, Thornfield would eventually have a feature that had no mechanical function. A small memorial garden that players could place anywhere in their city, where the plants grew regardless of the weather system, impervious to drought and flood and frost. The patch notes described it as a place that stays. He'd built it on a Tuesday. He'd never mentioned it in any interview. End.